And we want to continue the conversation on that Republican police reform measure, which collapsed in the Senate on Wednesday after Democrats blocked it. Senate Democrats say the legislation is an insufficient response to the nationwide calls for action to address police misconduct and racial injustice. Sam Brodey is the congressional reporter for the Daily Beast and joins us now to break it all down. Sam, good morning. Right off the bat, why did Senate Democrats vote to block this bill?
So, the first thing is they voted to block it because they think it's a bad bill and that they think the bill that they have authored is a better bill. And that seems sort of simple. And in the previous segment, obviously, they got a bit into the political calculations of this one. But really, Democrats believe it's more politically advantageous and really better for them. They feel that they can afford to hold out and wait for the opportunity to pass the bill that they think really addresses this problem and actually gets the job done. And I think there is a sense in the Democratic caucus that perhaps that time is not this year, but perhaps next year. If Joe Biden wins the presidency or they flip the Senate, that they would have a opportunity to really enact sweeping actions. But talking to Democratic sources yesterday, it was pretty clear that they feel that they're in a pretty solid position in blocking this bill and waiting for something better to come. I think something that's important to acknowledge here is that Democrats are facing their own party base, which really is expecting nothing short of some pretty comprehensive action here. And for Democrats to go forward with a compromise that in the eyes of that base, like the Republican bill, really doesn't go that far. I think they'd face some blowback there. So that's part of their maneuvering here.
Specifically, what kind of changes are Democrats looking for?
So the Republican bill does a couple things that Democrats do like. There is establishment of a nationwide database on officers' records, so that departments that are hiring can see if an officer has a record of misconduct. It makes lynching a federal hate crime. That hasn't been pushed through the Senate yet. So those are things Democrats like, but they believe that any comprehensive police reform bill, in order to really do anything, has to ban the kind of chokehold that killed George Floyd, no-knock warrants, that it has to end this principle of qualified immunity, which makes it harder for people who are victims of police brutality to sue cops for damages. They believe that all of these things have to be included. Republicans have shown a willingness to get to some of these places. I mean, among certain Democrats, there's sort of shock that this conversation is even happening at all. But some of those points, like qualified immunity, for example, are supported by a couple of Republicans here and there, but would be really, really tough to get into a bipartisan bill, most likely.
Switching gears a bit, presidential candidate and Democrat Joe Biden, according to new polls, has a 14-point lead ahead of President Trump. What is the big takeaway from a national poll like this? We are over 100 days away from the election. How much kind of should we take this? How seriously should we take a poll like this?
Yeah, I mean, polls, as most operatives will say, are sort of a snapshot in time of a particular race, and one poll certainly doesn't tell the whole story. It tells what's happening right now, but I think you have to look at it in the context of most polls that have been taken. And again, there's still a lot of time, and people who followed the 2016 election will tell you that much. But this is consistent with most polls that have been taken nationally that show Biden with a pretty commanding lead. I should note also that the Times released a slate of battleground state polls today, and it did not find Donald Trump up in a single one of the battleground states that he won in 2016. In Florida, for example, which is seen as really, really, really strong for the president, the Times poll found Biden up, I think, by 7 points. In Michigan, it was 11. So, as a one-off, perhaps it's good to not read too much into these polls. But I think the fact that you're seeing consistently polls on the national and battleground level show Biden with a pretty commanding lead, that's causing Republicans to worry. And publicly, they're starting to worry about it.
So this was something, Carlo, I do a podcast in the morning, and we were kind of debating this issue about the new polling and what it means. And we were going back and forth. Curious what you think. Joe Biden, one of the criticisms about him is that he's just so gaffe prone. Do you think that he runs the risk of when he gets back out there on the campaign trail? He's pretty much stayed quiet. I know he's had more of a presence in the last few weeks, but once he gets back out there and starts the debates and he's really as a presence, do you think that that could potentially hurt him?
It's a great question because, Trump does things all the time that would have been considered in another moment with another person to be a gaffe, and yet he gets away with it because that's sort of what the level of expectations is. I think it'll be interesting to see, we have this perception of Joe Biden as sort of a gaffe machine, but I do think, there's a sense among certain Democrats that the expectations for Biden are actually so low that in debates or public appearances, if he clears them, he'll end up benefiting from that, sort of in the same way that Trump did in the past. It's important to note that Trump's messaging almost right now totally centers around this argument that Joe Biden is incompetent. It plays on tropes about people, with dementia and things like that. Those are pretty strong claims to make. And if Biden is able to put together some strong performances, it's a case that can be easily disproven, and I think that would be pretty tough for the president's case and for his own messaging if Biden were to go out there and do a decent job, which I think, given expectations, you'd see the pundit class talking about what a great job Joe Biden has been doing and what a clear case he is making.
It's a really good point about expectations. We talk about that with the markets too, and earnings. It's all about expectations. All right, great reporting. Thank you so much, Sam Brodey, congressional reporter for the Daily Beast. Great to have you on.